must never forget that no government schemes are going to perfect man. We know that living in this world means dealing with what philosophers would call the phenomenology of evil, or as theologians would put it, the doctrine of sin. There is sin and evil in the world, and we're enjoined by Scripture and the Lord Jesus to oppose it with all our might.
Coming to you live from the corner of Fauci and Burns on Constitution on Fire Avenue, it's the America Held Hostage podcast. America's Constitution in Quarantine. Now here are your hosts, Jeff Dornik and John Hinton.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of America Held Hostage podcast. Really excited about today. Been again a lot of news, a lot of new information. You know, I feel like there's like a lot of recurring themes that are out there, but it's still new things that are constantly happening. Before we get started, just want to let you guys know that we are pre-selling a new book that's coming out this summer called 5 Steps to Kill a Nation by Pastor Sam Jones, a mutual friend of both of ours. If you go to gatekeepersonline.com/store, you can check that out. It's a great book. I've already read 4 out of the 5 chapters so far. Great information, really diving into the root reasons behind a lot of the stuff that we talk about here on the show. So check that out, gatekeepersonline.com/store. Check out 5 Steps to Kill a Nation by Pastor Sam Jones. John, so yeah, a lot of news, a lot of stuff going on. Let's kick things off and dive right in.
Bloomberg News is reporting that New York City has probably already had 1 million coronavirus cases. This was before we started reporting. So this is according to estimates from the New York City Department of Health. That might be interesting because that supports the theory that is now coming out from Stanford Medical and from the University of Southern California, saying that antibody testing shows that the virus has been here for months beforehand and that people have just been asymptomatic. So it's far more infectious, but it's far more deadly than what our initial estimates and data have been estimating and now showing. Texas Governor Greg Abbott told Discern News, people need to trust God through this pandemic. Lean on Jesus and you will weather this storm. To which we all say, amen. The Blaze, Glenn Beck's news aggregate site, showing you on Sunday night that Hong Kong is now using the coronavirus quarantine to arrest pro-democracy citizens. Now remember, before this started, Hong Kong was having demonstrations because they were cracking down or wanting to crack down on liberties in Hong Kong. The Chinese Communist Party was. People rebelled. They were having pro-democracy demonstrations for 6 months. I even saw a video where there were native, I'll just call them native Hong Kongians. I'll just make that up. Bushism right there.
That'll work.
Natives of Hong Kong who they were, on a Sunday night, there were over 50,000 of them that were singing hymns, praising God and wanting freedom. And we should have, as a country, we should have stood with them and given our support to them. Once again, where America, in a different world, if we would have been in Ronald Reagan's America in the 80s or the early 90s, if we would have seen that, we would have stood with those people. We would have been a friend of liberty to those that stood for liberty. But sadly, when W's father came to power, we saw what happened when people stood for freedom and liberty in 1989 in Tiananmen Square. We allowed 1 million Chinese to be slaughtered after they shut down the CNN cameras. Why? Because we had to protect our own businesses and we had to circle the wagons ourselves. We'll go to war for oil, but when it comes to freedom, we could really give a rat's behind.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of those things where it just shows who's actually in power leading up to this, because China knew that they had all the power because we relied on them so much for the cheap labor, the cheap goods, and all that kind of stuff. So finally, at least with Trump, he's coming in like, yeah, we're gonna take that back. You guys need to rely on us, not the other way around.
Now, I did see this morning. You may have seen this breaking news too, Jeff, that President Trump has ordered U.S. naval ships to shoot down Iranian. You can't even call them warships. Iranian war boats in the Persian Gulf if they harass our ships. I say more cowbell.
Yeah. Well,
although I think that type of saber rattling could come and bite us in the butt. But I mean, at this point, it's like, we're dealing with our own crisis. If you're gonna shoe fly, don't bother me.
Yeah, well, I think for the longest time we've put up with a lot of crap from other countries, and at the very least too, that this information is getting out there ahead of time and like basically giving them a warning, like, knock it off. I mean, and that's the thing. Trump's done that before with Iran, where they're pushing buttons, they're seeing how far they can go, and he's like, hey, if you keep going, I will just obliterate you. They knocked it off, so it'll be interesting to see. Are they gonna keep going, keep pushing, seeing how far he'll go, or are they going to kind of like, yeah, we'd like to keep our ships?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple days. If it would have been me, I would have issued the same threat to Vladimir Putin. We've seen, I guess, 4 times in the last 8 days that Russian fighter jets have harassed our own Air Force pilots over the skies of Alaska.
Yeah.
Deal with figuring out what you're going to do with the collapsing price of oil because you keep pumping, trying to have a penis measuring contest with Saudi Arabia. You want to harass us, I mean, we'll give you something to cry about. At this point, step to the U.S. and I don't want to say it, Jeff, but at this point, if anyone wants to cause a military disturbance with the U.S. when we're trying to deal with our own health crisis and our own lockdown of our own nation, I think that the full weight and measure of the U.S. military should come against any of those countries because what they're doing it should be considered an act of war. You're trying to attack us at our weakest point. Well, you can't display weakness. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. We won't attack anyone, but because we need to defend ourselves. But if you threaten us, we will defend ourselves.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's what's needed. And I think to a certain degree, I think they're pushing the boundaries to see where Trump's line is, because we both know with Obama, he would draw a line and then not follow through. So it'll be interesting to see, does Trump follow through? Does he draw that line in the sand and they cross it and he's like, yep, we're done here.
Yep. Amen. Because all it takes is just one time. One time you back it up and it just says, hey, you want to play with fire, Scarecrow? Step at me fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, well, we won't get fooled again. Thank you, George W. Bush. The Blaze also reports protesters descended on Annapolis, Maryland to demand that Governor Hogan reopen Maryland. This happened Saturday. Massive protests at the Maryland state capitol. That also coincides with protests that happened in Buffalo in northern New York. Also coincides with protests that happened down in your neck of the woods near Huntington Beach in Southern California, and also in San Diego, as we're seeing that more mass protests are occurring. But then on Sunday, we found out that George Stephanopoulos interviewed Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and said, what are you going to do about these protest pages on Facebook? And Mark Zuckerberg said, quote, we see these as harmful and the people that post these will be banned and the pages will be taken down immediately. Now, Jeff, if we had done this at any other time, it would have been seen as a threat to free speech. If we had seen this in any other country, because we've seen this in communist China, we've seen this in the totalitarian Ayatollah Khomeini regime of Iran, where these countries have locked down social media in order to stop protesters. And what have we called it? We have called it a threat to freedom and democracy and to free speech and liberty. And that what they're doing is totalitarian censorship. But when a private corporation does it, we're just sitting back and allowing it to occur and letting them call it, we're just taking down harmful misinformation. We're protecting you from yourselves, you plebeians.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those things where we're gonna I think as conservatives we're gonna have to push the button and see, and I think somebody's gonna have to step up and start suing. I mean, one of these nonprofit attorney organizations needs to step up and just start pushing, suing, taking on these big tech censorship, because while they are a private company, they are still considered our outlet for free speech. And so if you take this away, you're taking away people's voices. And that's a really, really dangerous thing, especially with how influential these social media platforms are. But then also, too, at what point did we decide, okay, in a state of emergency, there are no constitutional rights? This is what conservatives have been talking about for the longest time. This is even what conspiracy theorists have been talking about for the longest time. And everybody said, oh, that would never happen in America. Well, here we are. All of a sudden now, no freedom of speech, no right to peaceably assemble, no freedom of religion, even no right to bear arms. Like, at what point are we like, okay, there is this thing called the Constitution. That's supposed to be the law that the laws actually follow, and it's just getting thrown out the window and acting as if it's just a mere suggestion, not the actual rule of law.
Yeah, I mean, we just saw, and we'll get to this later in the podcast, but Jeff, I sent you video that broke last night that in Meridian, Idaho, a mother was arrested by police because they said that she was violating a self-quarantine order. She said, the self-quarantine order's been lifted. The governor said I could go to the park. They caught it on video. And the thing was, the cop said, you have 5 seconds to disperse from the park. And she said, no, go ahead and arrest me. Get it on tape. And her friend got it on tape. Those are Gestapo tactics. People that are good little brown shirts, good little SS officers, Gestapo tactics that happened in the Soviet Union, that happened in fascist Italy, that happened in Nazi Germany. Yes, we used to say 15 years ago that it was lazy for people to call George W. Bush Hitler. It's been lazy for the left to call Trump Hitler. But now you're seeing those type of dystopian tactics are now happening. And they're not just happening on the coast, people. Jeff lives in California. I live in New Jersey. We're covering news from all over the country and all over the globe from a Christian, constitutional, conservative worldview. But what's happening is that it starts on the coast. And if you're watching me, you see my hands getting closer and closer. It always starts on the coast, and then it starts to come further in. And typically, what we saw in the bank crisis and the housing crisis, the market bubble of 2007 to 2009, the Great Recession, you saw that what happened on the coast, it always took anywhere from 30 days to 6 to 12 months for what was happening on the coast to then work inward. Well, now we're in hyperdrive, as we've been saying in this podcast, and you're seeing the things that happen on the coast are now coming into flyover country in about 2 weeks' time. Pastor had his in New Jersey over the weekend. We'll get to this story too later. Pastor in New Jersey had his sermon interrupted because he was violating social distancing orders. Told my little birdie in a local police department, those are Gestapo tactics. Said, yeah, I wouldn't have personally interrupted the sermon myself. I said, if I was you, I would have just ignored it.
Yeah.
You don't have to respond.
Yeah. I was interviewing Bishop Robert E. Smith on my podcast more towards the beginning of the stay-at-home orders, and he was saying, he's like, we've met for prayer every morning, Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. for 40 years. He's like, we're not going to stop. And then they also hold evangelistic services there in the inner cities. He's like, we're not going to stop. He's like, somebody may call the police, they may come, and he's like, I'm just going to keep preaching. They can sit down, then they can arrest me after I'm done with my sermon, and then we'll figure it out from there. But he's like, like literally, if they come in, it's like, okay, you guys sit down, and then they'll hear his message, hear the gospel, and then they can arrest him.
Right. And the thing is that sounds radical to where we were 6 weeks ago. You're at the point now where, as we talked about in the Insiders podcast and broadcast last night, you're at the point now where you're going to have to start drawing a line in the sand and saying, as Martin Luther said, here I stand, I can do no other. You're going to have to civilly disobey. You're at that point. You need to sack up, gird your loins like a man, like God told Job, and be ready to do whatever it takes. No violence, but civilly disobey the governing authorities, because, yes, people are saying, oh, Romans 13, submit to the governing authorities. Well, Peter and John didn't submit to the governing authorities when they were thrown in jail overnight for preaching the gospel in the town square, and then the next day they get released. And what do? They go back right to the town square and continue preaching the gospel. Because we keep saying it, I'm going to keep quoting it. St. Augustine said it best. A law that is not based in the laws of nature and nature's God is no law at all. It's an unjust law. And that's what you've learned from Martin Luther King's letter at a Birmingham jail. He made the same type of argument. So we need to be prepared for that. Another story as we keep moving forward, Jeff. The Wynn Resorts Chief Executive Officer, Matt Maddox. So Wynn Resorts, huge in Las Vegas. They are calling for parts of the Nevada economy to start reopening in early May, followed by the Las Vegas Strip in the middle or later part of the month. Now, that was Sunday night. We found out Monday morning that the Las Vegas mayor said May 1st, Las Vegas is open for business because what we're doing is economic suicide. And I would say that if we're constitutional conservatives, we're for limited government, we're for freedom and liberty. That's the right thing to do. You need to go to your local officials and say, you need to take ownership of your own local towns, cities, townships with your own ordinances and say, yeah, we're going to tell the state government to just step off. We're going to go back to work here in this town. Because then you're going to put governors and state legislatures and state bureaucracies along with state police in an awkward, untenable position. Do we arrest our own citizens for going back to work? A mayor is telling its people to go back to work. Are we going to arrest that mayor now? I'd love to see that. I would love to see mayors do that and just say, you know what? We elected you. You work for us. We don't work for you. We're going back to work.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to, it's not saying that we shouldn't be social distancing. It's saying that the government doesn't have the authority to shut down the economy. The government doesn't have the authority to shut down churches and business and things like that. And that's the thing, is that, again, they can give us recommendations. They can say, hey, look, we need to do this. Let's come together. Let's do this in order to beat this thing. But at the same time, they still have the rule of law that, for whatever reason, they're deciding we don't need to follow.
You know, it comes down to personal responsibility. If you want to wear gloves, if you want to wear a mask, if you want to self-quarantine, great. If you want to socially distance, great. If you don't, I don't see a problem with that either. It's just you're taking more of a risk. So you can follow the recommendations, you can quarantine yourself, but otherwise take the proper precautions and get back to work. I just think that's common sense, Jeff. And if people want to call you a virus denier, that's not the case. We're finding out that this virus is 50 to 85 times more infectious, but yet 50 to 85 times less deadly. I'm not a virus denier. I just love truth. And the truth is that we've overreacted, we've committed social and economic suicide, and we're going to be digging out from this because of the largesse of governments all over the world. Sadly, for the next, 18 to 72 months. So I don't, if you want to debate that, go right ahead, but I just think it's a stupid argument.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So in your backyard, Governor Newsom announced that state modeling showed at least 25 million Californians would be infected by COVID-19 within 8 weeks. 4 weeks later, the state has 30,000 confirmed cases. That comes from the Fox affiliate in LA. 25 million would be infected in 8 weeks, and 4 weeks later you have 30,000 in the state, Jeff. Panic porn much?
Just a little bit. Yeah, but to be fair, with that Stanford study, we are seeing 50 to 85 times more people are actually contracting COVID-19. And so from that perspective, that would make sense, talking 25 million people. With that said, that 25 million people was supposed to be people that are actually having it based on the old methods of testing and that sort of thing. So that's 30,000 and 25 million is a huge, huge difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. ABC6, the Philadelphia affiliate for ABC here in my neck of the woods, saw thousands protesting Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf's unconstitutional stay-at-home order. Thousands descended on the Capitol in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to protest the COVID-19 shutdown. Also, now this was interesting. This broke over the weekend. To catch a predator, Vigilante posted a video online that showed the police chief of Stow, Massachusetts, Ralph Marino, was trying to solicit underage minors for sex. Now, the Stow, Massachusetts Police Department Facebook page has been deleted from Facebook, but this police chief has been fired and is now being investigated by the Massachusetts Attorney General for trying to meet a child for sex. Breaking 911 has not independently confirmed that this man in the video isn't. That was as of Sunday night. As of now, they have confirmed it. He has been fired, and he's being investigated. Although on Sunday, Marino was relieved of his duties, the city said in a statement. The YouTube channel Predator Poachers Massachusetts is a vigilante activist who posts videos of men he has caught in to catch a predator type schemes. So once again, we're not saying all cops are bad. What I am saying though is that if you believe in total depravity, there are people that compromised and corrupt that hide behind a badge. And sadly, we're finding out that more and more of them are coming to light. And they give the other ones that are just trying to do their job and are trying to provide food for their family, do an honest day's work, and serve and protect the citizenry of America. They give those other folks a bad name.
Very true.
Governor Nikki Haley, she linked to a story saying we can't bail out Illinois' notoriously corrupt and mismanaged pension system. We can't have Congress going to the trough for things like this. States should not get windfalls. It all has to be paid back. What was she alluding to? State lawmakers in Illinois are seeking more than $41 billion in a federal coronavirus aid to bail out the state's pension system. That's according to the Chicago Sun-Times. And Jeff, prediction, we said it before, I'll reiterate it, you are going to see this across the board, across the country. The larger states, leftist states, what I meant to say larger cities, are going to look to the federal government to bail them out for decades of fiscal mismanagement and leftist ideologies and policies that have bankrupted their towns, their states, their localities. And now, because people aren't working, they don't have as much income coming in. So now it's the perfect storm of just utter bullcrap chaos.
Yep. Welcome to leftist ideology. This is, it's always, well, hey, we're just doing what we want. We're doing what we think is right. And then, hey, let's just, when things don't work out, we'll just get a bailout from the bigger version of the government. And that's this crazy, crazy problem.
Welcome to Socialism 2020, Bernie Sanders America.
It's nobody's fault except the federal government is their motto.
Right. And the thing is that if we're going to restart the economy, I would say take another talking point from the leftists. If I want to go out and enjoy my constitutional rights, that's my body, my choice, right?
Yeah.
Well, if I want to go back to work, isn't that a decision that I should be able to make between me and my doctor?
Fair point.
5 Northern Illinois mayors are asking Governor J.B. Pritzker for the authority to reopen businesses next month. This is according to WGN Channel 9, Chicago's very own. WGN is reporting that 5 Northern Illinois mayors are asking the governor for the authority to reopen businesses starting in Rockford, Illinois, and that they want to begin to go back to work starting May 1st. The Rockford Register-Star reports that Loves Park Mayor Greg Jury, McChesney Park Mayor Steve Johnson, Durand President Robert Corwin, South Beloit Mayor Ted Rail, and Cherry Valley President Jim Clayson have sent this letter to the governor as of Friday, and that they're urging the governor to use common sense modifications to get the state back to work. Well, good for you. We'll see if it works. My little birdie in the Illinois Department of Health says that you're probably not going to see a reassessment of anything by the Illinois governor until at least April 30th. So they were going to go surgical, according to my little birdie, but then they did a blanket-wide stay-at-home order and shut down non-essential businesses. So now, unless you're an essential worker, Illinois is hunkered down, and that is not going to be reassessed until April 30th. So we'll see if the governor follows the urging of those local elected officials, or if he continues his draconian means. I have no idea. Another story that broke Monday from the BBC. Taxpayer across its platforms.
We lost you right there, John. So you'll have to repeat that story really quick. You're breaking up.
Can you hear me?
You are kind of frozen, coming in a little broken up really quick. Yeah, we may have lost him. Let's see if he comes back really quick. Here we go. Let's see. Yeah, you're coming in now. You are back.
Okay. Well, technical difficulties, everyone. Obviously, Facebook, YouTube, they're on to us. So we're doing something right. Anyway, the story that I was getting to was funded BBC has begun broadcasting Islamic calls to prayer in Great Britain. That comes from our buddies at Discern News, but I don't think that you would be seeing Christian prayers broadcast over the BBC a la C.S. Lewis when he was praying for the people and giving his commentary that then became the works of mere Christianity during World War II. I don't think you're going to be seeing that anytime soon, Jeff.
I don't think so.
So the next story that we have is that also from Great Britain, the NHS, that's the National Health Service, that is the nationalized, socialized health care of Great Britain. UK hospitals have been instructed to lower patient levels of oxygen as they're now rationing it because of the demand for it for coronavirus patients. That is concerning in and of itself because that also goes along with a report that broke from Breaking 911 last night that New York City health officials have been given an edict by the New York City Department of Health that anyone who comes under cardiac arrest has a mandated do not resuscitate order. They are now going to, if you come down with a heart attack, they are going to let you die. Something wicked this way comes, Jeff. We've been saying that before, but Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy, and right now he's having a field day right now.
See, again, this is evidence. When government gets involved in healthcare, this was the argument that was made against Obamacare, and everybody said, oh, there's going to be death panels, and then the left said, oh, that's just crazy. They would never do that. Well, look at where we are. They are deciding who has the right to live and who doesn't. And they are making that call from their offices there in the mayor's office or fire department or whichever office that they're in. But the problem becomes is that as we're finding out more statistics, what we're realizing is that, like we were saying with that Stanford study, it's 50 to 85 times less deadly than we originally thought. So we are going to let people die who need actual medical care right now in order to care for people that 99.something% are going to survive. That makes no logical sense, but again, this shows how inept our government actually is.
Yeah, we are inept, and when government is too large, it reacts very slowly. It's not streamlined. It's not localized. But sadly, we're finding out that our state and local governments, there's a lot of wickedness and tyranny in the high places. So across the board, we have little tyrants that are just drunk on power and control. And AOC was right when she said a couple months ago, we don't want your money, we want your power and control. Well, not us, the people. Oh, that's a gaffe. Yeah. And what's a gaffe? As Steve Day says, a gaffe is when a politician opens his or her mouth and the truth comes out. Breaking news from Discern just came to my phone. I want to read it to you here on the podcast. Health officials now believe that coronavirus has been circulating in the United States since at least December. According to this story, health experts now believe that COVID-19 has been circulating in the United States since December after it was confirmed that 2 people died in your neck of the woods in California from the coronavirus weeks before the previously recorded earliest death. Dr. Ashish K. Jha, director of the Harvard Global Health Institute. So watch this now. We now have learned people who are arguing against the data and the fear porn we were pimped for the last 5 weeks. coming to you from Stanford, from Southern Cal, and now Harvard, that are now saying the data, the modeling, everything that we've been told before was wrong. So this is from someone at Harvard who told CNN Wednesday morning, quote, that is a very significant finding. It takes at least 2 to 3 weeks from the time you contract the virus to the time you die from it. That means there was community spread happening in California as early as mid-January, if not earlier than that. We really need to go back now and look at a lot more cases from January, even December, and try to sort out when did we really first encounter this virus in the United States. The Los Angeles Times is reporting this morning that health officials suspect that the virus has been circulating in the United States since December. Quote from the Los Angeles Times, autopsies reveal first confirmed United States coronavirus deaths occurred in the Bay Area in early February. Health officials suspect the virus has been circulating in the United States, though, since December. But now we're finding out that there was a death that occurred in California, there was a death that occurred in California, someone who died from a car accident, that when they ran a COVID-19 death or test on the body during the autopsy, that it came back that person that had died in the car accident had coronavirus, and that was 3 weeks prior. That death was 3 weeks prior to the first recorded coronavirus case in Washington. I think that is fascinating. Fascinating. Dr. Jeff Smith, a physician who is a chief executive of Santa Clara County government, said earlier this month that data collected by the CDC, local health departments, and others suggest it was here a lot longer than we first believed, most likely since at least back in December. Thoughts on that, Jeff?
I think this goes to show, keep asking questions. We can't always just accept everything that people say just because they say it, whether they're in authority or leadership or not. And I think that's one of the problems that we've really been seeing as a talking point, whether it's dealing with climate change, whether it's dealing with this, whether it's dealing with WMDs, is that the government keeps saying, just trust us. This is what we're saying. But they don't actually know what they're talking about. They're just putting out a talking point that fits their narrative. So the problem is that we have to keep asking questions until we actually get down to what the truth really is. And as we keep pushing, as we keep finding out more, we keep realizing the government isn't telling us the truth. The experts aren't telling us the truth. So maybe we need to stop just taking what they're saying at face value and keep pushing until we actually see the documented facts, not just saying, well, Dr. Fauci said it, so it must be true.
I've quoted it before, question with boldness, even the very existence of God, because if God exists, he would rather respect honest questioning than blind trust. That's a quote from Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson was not a believer. But the point was that God loves truth. So you question with boldness to find the truth. You don't just go with blind trust because of a spirit of fear. Finding out from zerohedge.com and also from Breaking News 911 video being posted over the weekend that there are starting to be riots in the streets of Paris because of coronavirus lockdown and mistreatment of minorities. That's on top of what's happening in Cape Town, South Africa, as Cape Town cops are firing rubber bullets and tear gas at South Africans, as now South Africa is dealing with riots and looting sparked by food shortages. Sad, Jeff. We have no idea what's coming over the next couple months. I think we're only scratching the surface, and we need to be as wise as serpents and yet innocent as doves at this point. You need to stand for boldness. You need to ask questions. You need to look for data. You need to be agents of change, but also ambassadors of Christ. We don't need to kowtow to a spirit of fear, but we need to be lights in the darkness, because now the darkness is going to begin running roughshod. And if you think that people are going to pull back from these draconian means before they literally have to, you got another thing coming. Just like if you tell protesters in America don't gather, more are going to gather. That same spirit has infected your elected officials that are doing these draconian means. You tell those elected officials ease the lockdown, they are going to grasp that brass ring even more. It's like the Lord of the Rings. They want their precious, and it is corrupting them to the absolute end. And unless they let it go, they're going to destroy themselves in the process.
Yep, and that's why as we're heading into election season, we need to make sure that we are electing officials that are constitutional, that are principled, that are not just there looking for personal gain, status, power, money, whatever it might be. We need to be electing the right people that are principled in freedom and liberty in the Constitution.
Well, if you saw it Monday, you know that we didn't get to this story because we were getting caught up from the weekend. We're still getting caught up on stories. But Wednesday, the oil markets collapsed. For the first time in history, a barrel of oil traded for below $0 a barrel. So what does that mean? Because at one point it was negative $40 a barrel. What that meant was oil speculators at the end of the month are looking for ways to get rid of their contracts and to sell their fuel. The thing is, we don't have enough storage capacity anymore because our fuel consumption has dropped by a third. And there's a lot more products that are made with petroleum than we realize. So people with these oil speculative contracts were then saying, no, I will pay you to take the oil that's being produced. So they're going to lose money. And the thing is, that's but the first part. That's just the first time that's going to occur. You watch this until demand begins to increase again and people begin to go back to work and use their cars. This is going to occur again and again. And it's going to put we've got two options in America. Either we're going to bail out the oil industry in America because we want to continue to be energy independent, especially if we're going to go to war. Or you're going to see a lot of these independent oil producers in America, they're going to go belly up because they need the price at $40 a barrel in order to make money. They break even at about $25 a barrel. But if they're paying you to take the oil, they're going to lose jobs. We've already seen a report where 5,600 oil jobs have already been lost in the country since the start of this. And that's just scratching the surface. The CNBC is reporting that United Airlines posts a $2.1 billion loss amid the coronavirus outbreak. They're seeking more government aid. Well, of course they are, because everybody is now bellying up to the bar to get a spot on the government teat. The White House and Congress, they found common ground. They were talking about it over the weekend. The depleted Paycheck Protection Program, they have now funded that. They're calling it Phase 3.5, another $500 billion injection into the economy. $350 billion will be for the Paycheck Protection Program to continue on. So they were nearing a deal for that depleted loan fund program for small businesses. That passed in the Senate. It's now going to the House for a vote tomorrow. You sent me this story that the Washington Examiner is showing that Planned Parenthood is considered essential, as abortion is a billion-dollar business. So you can't go to church and worship Jesus. We're going to let you die if you have a heart attack. But if you want to rip those babies limb from limb, yeah, that's essential. We can let you do that. You're going to have to pull your own teeth, Jeff, but you won't have to pull that baby out of your own vaginal canal. We will do it for you, and we will celebrate it on the altar to Molech.
Well, and the thing is, like we were mentioning, we're releasing people that have actually committed crimes, so that way they don't die from coronavirus. But let's make it legal to actually take innocent lives during coronavirus, because that makes perfect sense.
Right. Yeah. But up is down, down is up. We are living in a time where Scripture said you will see men who will call good evil and evil good.
Yep.
We're also finding out from the Wall Street Journal, this was tweeted by Britt Hume, that flattening the curve is flattening hospitals, as now hospitals are having to furlough workers, they're having to cut hours, they're having to lay off workers, and they're beginning to go into bankruptcy. Why? Because unless you have coronavirus, your elective surgeries and your non-essential health means are considered unimportant. Well, it's not preventative health, it's health maintenance. So now you're going to collapse the economy and our health industry, which is the largest industry in America right now, because we based it all on some fake news. Just stupid, absolutely stupid. And I keep coming back to this over and over again. I'm just so exasperated in these podcasts because of the I'll just say it, the dumbassery that's on display right now. The New York Post says inmates committing crimes after their coronavirus release is unconscionable to Mayor Bill de Blasio. Well, of course it is, because for a godless communist pagan, he doesn't believe in total depravity. For us, Jeff, it's common sense. If you're willing to commit crimes before and you don't respect people, you're going to do it again unless you've been regenerated by the gospel of Jesus Christ and made a life change. That's just common sense.
Well, see, that's the thing about the left, is that they think the best of criminals, and see that makes absolutely no sense at all to me. It's like because we believe in total depravity, we believe in the fact that everybody is born a sinner. The left takes it as everybody starts out as a good person, and then maybe they make a decision to go bad. But everybody's really good when it comes down to it. And that's the thing that we have to remember, is that we have a completely different worldview. And the problem is that their faulty worldview is falling apart before their very eyes.
Very true. In related news, the New York Post says studies show that testicles may make men more vulnerable to coronavirus. To which I say, there's a lot of people without balls that are making a lot of decisions now. So, and there's a lot of men with balls that are really showing us that they're really vulnerable to the fear porn. So that study is absolutely correct, Jeff.
Well, we'll see. I was having a conversation with Patrick Wyatt, who's the co-host of the Shining Light podcast. And I know that he and Sam have been talking about this on their podcast, and because Patrick is making the claim that he believes that coronavirus is actually a biological weapon because it's targeting certain things, including when you look at studies about men who are the majority of the people who have gotten coronavirus, that it actually can affect their ability to reproduce. So then that becomes an issue of, is it targeting certain things in order to attack Western society, Western culture, weaken us, that sort of thing, coming from either the globalists or the communists or the socialists or that sort of thing. So that does fit in with what Patrick and I were talking about on the phone maybe 2 weeks ago. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and a great documentary that now a lot of people in the intelligence community are following after the fact and it's leaking out, but piecemeal fashion is. If you go to the Epoch Times, EPOCH Times, go on YouTube, look up Epoch Times Wuhan coronavirus. You're going to see a documentary that was produced. It's an hour-long documentary that was produced 2 weeks ago. It has almost 3 million views, and a lot of the stuff that's now leaking out about the origin of the virus, they go back to scientific data that has been posted since 2013, research papers that were released in China, and certain things that were that have now been scrubbed, but they have the actual screen captures when this was happening in January of how the virus originated, how it's been altered in a lab, that it did originate from bats, but that it didn't originate from the wet market. That was propaganda. That was agitprop from the Chinese Communist Party. So I would recommend that. Watch the Wuhan coronavirus documentary from the Epoch Times. It's an hour long. It's going to give you a lot of information as to the background of this, because what Brett Baer broke last week on Fox News, where he said that U.S. intelligence now believes that the virus originated from a Wuhan Virology Institute lab, that was broken, not by Adam Housley, which we also cited last week in our podcast. It was broken by the Epoch Times. So watch that. And they have a lot of good news coming out of China because they have a lot of embedded reporters that are reporting behind the front lines. We're finding out VirginiaBusiness.com says 78% of Virginia restaurant workers laid off since March, since Governor Northam's coronavirus closure orders. 78% of Virginia restaurant workers have been laid off. Whew.
But also that goes to show this is affecting proportionately the lower class, the people that are making closer to minimum wage, the people that make less money in general. This coronavirus shutdown is affecting them. The people that are making the decisions don't have to worry about money. It's the people like Nancy Pelosi that are making these decisions, that are supporting the shutdowns. She's got pints and pints of ice cream stuck in her $24,000 freezer. The people that this is affecting are the people that are working at the fast food places, that are working at Applebee's and at Olive Garden and things like that. This is who this is affecting. And we need to remember that that the government works for us, not the other way around. And they need to start thinking about what's best for those people that no longer have a way to provide for their families.
It's very true. It's very true. Well, we're going to need to close up here. There's just so much more information. I will get to a couple of these. Harvard has been demanded by President Trump yesterday at his press conference to return $9 million in taxpayer-funded bailout money. They have $41 billion in endowments. I don't think you need $9 million. Good news from Breaking 911. The New York City Pride Parade canceled for the first time in half a century. Ally Financial, that is the car loan funding arm of General Motors, has said that 25% of its auto loan customers have asked for payment deferrals. That's from Bloomberg. Bloomberg also reporting GM and Ford's finance arms will likely face multi-billion-dollar losses linked to a dramatic drop in used car prices. The Drudge Report, excuse me, the Drudge Report reporting that 1.5 million unemployment claims have been filed in Florida, but just 40,193 have been paid. Canadian sawmills, according to Bloomberg, have slowed output due to the price slump for lumber, but that also means that the wood chips required to make toilet paper and wipes are becoming more scarce. So we're going to have a toilet paper and paper towel and wet wipe shortage.
Well, and now we're getting into non-essential work that supports essential work, because I mean toilet paper and paper towels are essential, but it's this weird kind of cycle of where the government is picking and choosing what's an essential job, what's not an essential job. And I think to a certain degree, we're getting to this point now to where we need to realize almost every business is essential in some way. There's a lot of different businesses out there that are providing support for essential businesses, and we need to remember that our economy isn't just like, okay, only restaurants are good because you can do takeout, but they've got to buy the food from a farmer. They've got to buy it from a distributor. They've got somebody's got to do the printing on the labels on the food that goes in the stores. We got to remember that there's this cycle that happens within the economy and within capitalism, that we can't just pick and choose which businesses are good and which businesses are bad.
Yeah, any job that provides for you and your family to put food on the table and pay your bills is an essential job. But that's because we come at this from a biblical worldview. As a man works, so shall he eat. But pagans don't believe that. There's work for me, but not for thee. Well, we'll get to more of these stories tomorrow as we are still catching up on. We're now into Tuesday in our digital stack of stuff. So Thursday, we're going to try and go bullet points through another hour to get caught up, because I want to clear out the DMs and be ready for another deluge of news that's going to happen over the weekend. But a funny anecdote today from our good friends at the Babylon Bee, Jeff. The Babylon Bee said, they posted, this handy guide will help you quickly and effectively understand what celebrities, neighbors, and even politicians actually mean when they use these common phrases. COVID-19 talking points translation guide. I thought that this was absolutely hilarious. Talking point. Shutting down the whole economy could have bad consequences. Translation, I want people to die. Talking point. I'm a little worried about government overreach. Translation, I want people to die. What about my constitutional rights? Translation, I want people to die. The virus originated in Wuhan, China. Translation, I want people to die, and also, I'm racist. Talking point, Trump has managed this situation fairly well. Translation, I want all people to die as I worship at my shrine of Trump. Talking point, the World Health Organization kind of blew it on this one. Translation, I want people to die and I hate science. Talking point, I sure would like to go for a jog today. Translation, I want people to die so I can jog over their lifeless bodies. And talking point, stay the F home. Translation, I have an unlimited love for humanity, and I believe together we can end death for good. Spot on. Absolutely spot on, Jeff.
That basically sums up the talking points of the left pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. My final thought for today. I don't have a quote. I don't have some sort of anecdote. My commentary for today is go outside, enjoy the sunshine, take a walk. If you are in one of these lockdown places, go have a sense of normalcy today. Turn off the cable news. Listen to some good, reassuring podcasts, whether it's constitutional in nature. I would recommend listening to R.C. Sproul and Renewing Your Mind or something where you're going to get some solid biblical counsel. Let not your heart be troubled. And we need to do a better job of understanding that we're now in a new normal. What is concerning to us is going to be here for quite some time. So you're going to have to find a way, as mental health professionals call it, self-care. You're going to have to find a way to be able to keep yourself sane. So find a new hobby. Don't let the time do you. Renew the time that you've been given. And we're going to be here for a while. So that's my commentary. Find stuff that you enjoy, unplug, unwind, and find there's still a lot of blessings that we can partake in, a lot of freedoms that we still do have. So be grateful for that. And tomorrow has enough worry of its own, as Jesus said. Us worrying about what comes tomorrow adds no hour to our lives, just as he said. So let not your heart be troubled. If you believe in God, believe also in Jesus Christ. And remember that we are a city set upon a hill, lights in the darkness, and that how we react to this with hope for the future is going to be, it's going to be countercultural, but it's going to be the catalyst for the great American comeback. But if we buy into this fear, that comeback is going to crash. So that comeback starts with you. Get out and do something different. Go for a run. Go for a jog. Unplug. Watch a good movie. Check on your neighbors. Go run errands. Try to get back to a sense of normalcy, and we will get through this together.
Yeah, definitely. And I think kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit too, and kind of taking a little bit of a different direction is, and I know we've talked about this off and on over the last few weeks, but we're going to have to decide what kind of country we're going to be moving forward. We have to decide, who we're going to be as individuals, who we're going to be as a country. We have to decide on the big national scale. Do we want to be a free society, or do we want to be a socialistic society that relies on the government for all of our answers and solutions to everything? Do we want to take personal responsibility, or do we want to pass the buck on to somebody else? And we're really coming down to this debate and this fight over the literal soul of our country. Who are we? Who do we want to be as Americans? And I think that one of the things that we're going to have to do as conservatives and as Christians is we're going to have to decide to literally lead the way by taking responsibility, by doing things ourselves, by taking care of our neighbor when they're in need, by making it to where our friends and our family and people in our church in our church congregations don't need to turn to the government for help and assistance and that sort of thing, because our local church family and our local friends and that sort of thing should be filling that void already. There shouldn't be a need for the government to come in with solutions and with answers. We as Christians and conservatives should not be passing the buck to the federal government to demand that they take care of our friends and family. We should be doing that ourselves. And so if we want to have the government get out of our lives, we're going to have to start taking some responsibility and lead the way. And then we can go and we can make the argument to the American people, look, we don't need the government. I want freedom and liberty. You want freedom and liberty too. Let's start taking care of each other. Let's start helping those in need. Let's start going grocery shopping. Let's buy somebody food if they literally have nothing in their freezer. Let's check on our friends and family, make sure that they're okay, see if they need anything. If we can take that on ourselves, maybe in the long run, we could make the argument to even leftists that, hey, we're the more compassionate ones. We're the ones that are actually trying to do something. We're not trying to take from others to give to those in need. We're giving it to them on our own. And I think that that's something that moving forward, when we're looking at who are we as Americans, historically, that's who we were. And I think that we've lost that. We need to get back to that to a certain degree. So again, take responsibility, but put that on yourselves. I want to be the American that our founding fathers originally intended, and that is, taking care of our friends, family, neighbors, and church family. So that's what I'll leave you with. So, but yeah, John, a lot of news, like you keep saying. I don't know if we ever fully catch up, but it's always important to really decipher through all of this stuff and figure out what's really going on out there.
It is. There's a lot of people now that are they're following the truth as they perceive it. They're following what their, quote, itching ears want to hear. And we are told that the Holy Spirit leads us into truth. Scripture is truth. That Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that all truth comes from the Father. So the truth sets us free. Truth emanates from Christ. It emanates from the Father. It's displayed to us through His Son, and it is shown to us through the Holy Spirit and through His Word. That's the quadruple whammy. So we need to realize that what Jesus said was right. For this reason I was born, and for this reason I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who hears the truth hears my voice. We have to be able to take what we're seeing and hearing and put it through a scriptural lens and be able to decipher it now more than ever. Because if we don't, Colossians 2:8 warns us, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which is based upon the principles and patterns of this world and upon human tradition rather than on Christ. So in closing, we need to bury ourselves in the truth. We need to filter all this through a biblical worldview lens. And in doing so, we're going to be able to help lead others to get back to the first things in the ancient paths. And that's what's going to lead the great American comeback.
Yep, totally agree. So, well, we will be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific time for the America Held Hostage podcast. In about an hour, I'm going to be doing an episode of Conversations with Jeff with a guy named Aaron Wren. We're going to be talking about biblical masculinity, which will be a very good, interesting conversation. So make sure you guys tune into that. Come in live, post comments, questions, that sort of thing. I can always ask him anything you guys might have live. So check that out. We'll be back here again tomorrow morning. But again, stay in God's word. Stay positive. Keep trusting in Him. That's going to be most important. So, and hey, see you guys tomorrow.